So I'm working on the throttle and where it's going to be mounted, and I've got it mocked up here. That's roughly where it'll be. It's actually low, but what I'm doing is seeing how long that my cables need to be. So I'm using this short piece of green garden hose and to simulate kind of the cabling, and wraps around, and it's going to go along here. I'll drill holes through there, of course. I'm going to curve this way. It'll be under, it's going to go under this floor, but I've got it roughly where it's going to be, and then run up that way. Now, what I did is that hose, or the cable for the transmission, is going to go up and kind of up and then come here and curve. I'll slide it in here. Tight, actually. What it needs to do, it have to run along here. It's gonna have to go down in there, and you can see right there, that's where it'll hook on, and then there's a mount point. Let's see. Right there. And so the cable will come down and it'll mount on that. That's what will hold the cable, and then the cable will extend down and push that and pull that, go back and forth. And that mount point that I just mentioned, if you look at the, this is the throttle setup for my engine. And so this will be a similar kind of a mount like this, where the cable will get clamped in here, and then it extends and I push and pull. That's for the throttle, and that'll be a similar setup with this going to that transmission shift lever that I showed. And so routing that hose, and what I did, I routed up to there, and then that's where it ended, and then I had to continue on. And so I need another 4 feet. So it's 14 feet basically from where to be mounted, that shift lever, all the way back following that route. Now for that throttle assembly, I'm planning on, I think, mounting it right on top of the stringer here, and so the cable will come to that point. Now grab that here a second. Show you what I'm thinking about here. Be something. What I'm going to do is just mount it like this, right on the stringer, and so the cable be clamped in on this side where I'm moving my thumb there, and then I'll come and attach to that lever, because this engine, it's got an electronic, I don't want to drop that thing. So there's a wire harness that plugs into that from the engine, and then so this is electronic throttle, and it's either a frequency generator or pulse width modulated PWM signal, I'm assuming. And so by routing my throttle that way, or the throttle cable, so again, the shift cable and throttle cable will follow the same path to here, and then the shift cable, like I said, will go up and go that way, and then throttle cable will just go that way. And that length to the throttle cable is 10 feet. So I got 14 feet and 10 feet. And so my shift lever for the control, it's going to be pretty slick. Again, this is too low. It actually be, the top of this will be up closer to this edge. And of course, there is a nice chrome cover for that. So, but I just have this temporary board so I could move it around and figure out how I'm going to do this. Because if this throttle, actually, I'll pull it out. All right, so this throttle control assembly, this is the back part of it. Actually, you know what? Just a second, I'll get my tripod out. Okay. So this back part, this assembly, you'll see like if I shift, this would be simulating actually a Ford, and this up. So there's multiple things happening here. This connection is what is for the throttle cable. So this part swivels. So the throttle cable will come in here, be secured, and then it'll extend to here. So as I throttle forward, that obviously will pull this. If we can see that. So it'll pull that. But then also, so I'll go back to neutral. Now these two things move when I go forward. This allows an either pulling action to shift it into forward gear or pushing. So it depends on your transmission and setup. And then if I push this lever this way, this will be reverse. So your throttle, this will swivel over, and so you'll get throttle pulling action there. But if you notice, these two things go the opposite way. So forward, that goes that way, this goes forward, towards me. When I go reverse, they go the opposite. So that's how it shifts between forward and reverse. And this unit, relative to this, you can have this be forward like I have. You can flip it around, have it be going reverse, or down or up if you have room. But so you've got flexibility depending on your setup. And for mine, boat's going to go forward. And if you remember, the cables will go forward and curve around. If you remember from my last video, I showed that. So that's how that works. And getting this set up and figured out how it's going to work. I've got kind of limited room there where this is and where the ceiling panel will be, and so it took me a while to figure out what was going to work and allow me to have a place to run the cables. So in this boat, it's kind of tight, and so anyway, I finally got it figured out. So I need to order 2 cables now. 14-foot one for the throttle, for the transmission shift cable, and then a 10-foot one for the throttle connection. That'll connect to this. It'll be mounted on the top of my stringer. And having it mounted on the stringer like that, that'll be relatively easy to service. And there's multiple places I could put it, but I want it relatively protected. And so it'll be under the motor box. And so it should work pretty good. So that's where I am. Another note, so the throttle control is going to be mounted there. One thing, I had just recently run my hydraulic hoses for the hydraulic steering. You can see the 2 peeled up like that. It turns out I had them coming right through here like that, and they're right in the way, of course. So what I'm going to have to do is divert them both down below that throttle control back up, because there's interference that could be rubbing. If you remember the action with that throttle control, all those moving parts, I do not want anything rubbing. So unfortunately, I'm gonna have to route it down, go back up, and I've got the hoses long enough. But if I would have just run them from the back all the way front down here, it would have been no problem. But of course, I didn't do that. So anyway, and I got Thursday night football tonight. It's the opening game of the season, actually. It's Eagles and the Cowboys. So they're in a weather delay right now, and they're about to get going again. So so again, I'm gonna have to. So now I'm gonna have to drill a couple extra holes back to this for those hoses to go down and then back up. So not a huge deal, but just kind of irritating that I had to do that. But those things happen. So my throttle cable and shift cable arrived. What I'm working on now are I'm working on the throttle cable and the shift cable, routing those. And so the way my throttle assembly be mounted, the way I figured out how to do it was to make the connection so the cables came out going towards the front or going forward, and then it has a nice easy curve going around like that, which will be behind the ceiling. And then I drill a hole through there, and then they'll route here, and I'll go over the other side and show you how that's going to work. And my plan right now is to actually keep these tied together. I'll use hose clamps, the rubber hose clamps. I'll show those here. Same hose clamps that I use for the hydraulic hoses, which I have pulled out right now. And tie them together is my plan. And so I drilled one hole through that frame for both of them to go through and go. So I'll come around here and show you what the routing looks like. Hose clamps, these things. That's what I'll use to tie them various places. So come through the hole, and basically the front seat goes right in this area. So I want basically be going behind the ceilings and then under the flooring, which sits in here, and then the ceiling will be roughly like that. So they'll just kind of sneak right under the bottom edge of the ceiling and under this supporting frame for the flooring, and I'll have to cut a couple of notches or for these to go under there. And so this cable, that's the throttle one, and it comes up and it's gonna go right there. And then my throttle assembly, I plan on mounting, you can see it. So that cable comes up right there, and this whole metal assembly is all what came with the engine, and you can see how that'll be mounted. So I'm gonna screw that throttle assembly right to the top of the stringer. I think that's gonna work well. I think I mentioned that last time. I think I did a previous video about that. And so that way I can get to it just by opening the engine hatch like that. And just, so I think that'll be a good place for it. And the cable routing seems to be reasonable. The radius on these, if I hadn't mentioned it before, it's not, the bend isn't, it's not supposed to be under a 4-inch radius, which I don't have that. Now the shift cable, which is this other one here, which I'll pull it over here. It's gonna go up, and I'm still kind of sorting through how that's gonna work. It's gonna come up this way somehow. And in the last video I did mention about, I was using a garden hose to kind of help route it. And as it looks like it is gonna work going through here and down in there. Now, when I connect it up, you can see it right there. I don't have it connected or anything. It might be a little tight of a bend there. I'm not exactly sure how I'm gonna do that just yet, but I think it's gonna work. I think it should be fine. And I don't know exactly how I'll have this routed up in this area, but I'm gonna work on the throttle first, and then I'll deal with that shift cable. And continuing on with the throttle cable, and start working on the shift cable. So throttle cable, there's the throttle assembly, and I've got it. I decided to make a little piece of wood for that whole assembly to be mounted on, and then that whole thing will get screwed to the top of the stringer. That way it's supported all the way to the side there, instead of it just hanging off. So I always say I need to encapsulate that, but that's for the throttle. Now the shift cable, which is going to come this way somehow and go down there like I mentioned. I'll show you what I've got going on. Give me a second. All right, doing my Gumby impression. So the shift connection is right there. That goes back and forth to shift the transmission forward and reverse. And then right here, this thing, can't see the top plate because I can't get there, but this is what bolts onto that, so there are multiple holes on the top of that. And then the shift cable latches in here. Pretty standard, standard setup. And the issue is, I don't know if you can see, it's really hard to see here. So I have a ruler set on top there. Basically I have it on top of the shift lever, and then there's this right here, that thing that the ruler is sitting on top of is the oil cooler from the transmission and engine. There it is. You can see a little bit better. So that's kind of right in line, right in the way of there's that right there. So the shift cable has to come back this way. Well, it runs right into that cooler. So I set that ruler on top. You can see right there. This ruler goes all the way over. Don't mind that shift cable. So basically it's about 2 inches where, like the shift cable, I can't bend it. I can't hook it here and then bend it up. I mean, there's only just probably 3 inches max there. So what I'm going to need to do now, this bracket raises it up about 3/4 of an inch. So now I got like 1.25 inches or so that I need some kind of spacer, basically, that I'm going to have to bolt on this in between this bracket and that connection point. So that mounting point. So that's what I got going on. And so I'm going to be figuring that out. So I'm working on the spacer that I mentioned in an earlier video. Then I need the mount point on the transmission. It'll be this bottom surface. And then I mentioned how I needed 1.25 inch spacer. I don't actually need 1.25 inch. This is slightly over 3/4 of an inch, and that's actually enough. And so the way this will work is this will get bolted to that mount point, and then since it sits on this side of the mount point, there's actually 2 more holes available to provide some good lateral stability there. And then so the cable will come down in here, and so this piece of wood, the reason I have that is to provide some strain relief, because the cable comes down and then latches in there, and then it goes to the actual shift lever in the transmission. And I wanted some strain relief, so it wasn't just this connection holding all the force of that cable. I mean, it's not like there'll be a lot, but the cable, if you remember, it goes up like this, and I just wanted something here. So this actually, I had this in there before with a shorter piece on the bottom, and it's going to work really good. So the cable will come through here, and then it'll be able to go up, and that'll help stabilize that. So I'll go put this in the boat. My plan is to bolt this to this piece of wood, but I just don't have a bolt handy. I started with a screw for now, but then I'll drill that out and put a bolt in there. So I'll show what this looks like in the boat. So still working on the cable routing for the transmission shift cable. The way I have this right now, it's going down, and it kind of goes down. See this bracket? It's connected to the alternator. I have it going down. What I want to do is have it come up a little bit. I don't know if you can see it. I'll probably put it in, but maybe in between these 2 hoses. And then I made a bracket here. I don't know if you can see that. Let me see what I can do with this. Get a little closer. This right here, it's a 1-inch piece of aluminum, flat aluminum stock that basically is bolted to the bottom of this bracket that holds that relay box and engine ECM. And I put a bend in it, and I put a hose clamp on it. And so my plan is, let me put this back down. Make sure you can see. And so what I'm going to be doing is this cable will curve, go through there. That'll help stabilize it, and then it'll go down and then mount to that spacer mount that I showed earlier. But I need to do those. Route this a little differently. Bring this down. Go up like here. Make it work okay. Oh man, that's not be room for it. I need to move this. Got this. This is a clamp on here. This is to change oil. You can suck it out because oil pan, you hard to get down in there. This came with the engine. I have it hanging on. There's another hole in this bracket. I'll probably have to put a hanger on the inside of this, assuming this works. Because I want this transmission cable to be up here like this. So it does look like it's going to work. And then my plan is there are 2 holes already in this. This actually is one of the lift points for the engine to pick the whole engine up. And I cut this bracket because I knew it was going to be too tall. And then I put holes in it, and essentially I kept the thing. So if I ever need to pull the engine out, I've got the other part of that lift point. But since there's holes in it, I'm going to bolt a couple of hose clamps to hold this shift cable there. So what I've got to do is I've got to unbolt that hose clamp there. So I'll go do that here in a second, and then I'll show you how it looks after it's put in there. So I thought I'd show that mount point. So you can see if there are those holes in it. That's where that, this thing. That's where this will get bolted to. So I'll show that here. Okay, so here you can see how the cable is attached to this. I don't have that latched, but and it's a little tricky to get that up in there to mount because the cable's fighting me a little bit, but I'll get it bolted and then show you what it looks like. Okay, so now got the cable attached to the shift lever, and you can see that how that's mounted. A little bit hard, weird angle, but then you can see the hose clamp, and then see the cable go up, and then it comes up here, and then here's that piece of aluminum that I made to hold that hose clamp, and then it's going to curve and go through there. And I'm not sure, I really don't want it up against that riser because those get hot when the engine's running. And so I'm not sure how I'm gonna deal with that. Ideally, what I'd like to do is make another bracket, bolt on there, but I'm a little scared of unbolting that. Put a little L bracket in there, but we'll see. Worst case, I'll get some kind of insulating hose cover and just have it sitting like that. So progress, and then I'll have to do something here to keep this from rubbing up against that. I'll have to put some kind of protector on that too, or something. So I'm getting there. Something I thought of last night, I've got this bracket here that's holding the cable. I just thought there could be interference with my motor box there. So I am gonna have to check that out. I hope there isn't. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna set my phone down in there and then close that up, and so I can kind of see what's going on when I close it. Okay, let's put this down in here. This is what I'm looking for. It's my bracket. Let's see if any part of the motor box hits it. Okay, did you see anything? Let's take a look. So nothing was hitting this bracket, but I think it might have been contacting the cable here. So let's see what we see here. Does it look like it's touching that? Let's take a look. So yes, it is contacting this a little bit, and I can see a little, actually a witness mark right there. So what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to flip this hose clamp around, which means I got to pull this cable. Actually, no, I don't. No, I don't. I can just disconnect it here. Flip it around, which will then lower this down. And then if that works, I'll cut this off so it's not sticking up so much. And we'll see how that works. The last attempt, it was still hitting my phone, so I'm trying different things. See if I can get this. I just need to see if it's contacting this at all. Hopefully this will work. Let's see. Just looking for any movement in this cable. So it's still touching this. So this cable can't run here. So what I'm going to try to do is run it down a little lower, down into there and then over. Which means I've got to totally disconnect it from all in there and my bracket. So, but it's got to be done because it can't be hitting that. Okay, I finally got figured out how to secure this shift cable. I used to have that aluminum bracket I made here, but I moved it over to that side. I had to actually remake it. And so I got a hose clamp that's sitting there, and then it curves down and goes down there. You can see, there it is. That's that little spacer sort of assembly I made. And then what I did is, so now I've got it here, and I went ahead and I've got it bolted on the inside of this bracket in two places. And so that's gonna work pretty good. Now I gotta figure out what to do. Here, I'll show you in a second. So now you can see, if I show it, go down here, you can see how this cable is secured in the inside of the bracket. It comes right here. Then it's kind of just sort of curves down. I mean, I'm gonna mount it somehow with a hose clamp to the stringer somehow, and I guess it's okay that it'll just be like that. Now it needs to be on the inside edge of this. So I think when I pull it in position, I can pull it a little tighter. It'll pull that in down a little bit. The reason it needs to be on the inside of that because I've got a panel that goes there behind the seat. So now I'll be working on how to mount it down here. Okay, got some updates here. So the shift cable, like I showed before, it's mounted on the inside of this bracket here. I don't know if you can see, got up 2 hose clamps there, and it comes down and then under the stringer. And then what I did is I just used a hose clamp on this batten here, and I put both of the cables together. So my throttle cable, put this little block here with a hose clamp, and then that just goes right up to the throttle cable assembly. So they come together and then together go around, and I had to cut that away, use my Dremel tool for that. And hose clamp, and then it goes, and there's a hole that I drilled before, and a hose clamp here, and then they go up, and they will curve around, and the throttle control will be roughly in this area right here. So you can see how that'll curve around. And having them curve like this gives me just some nice play and margin, and it'll allow me to work on it. My plan is to have the ceiling be removable in case I need to service that. So I'm happy with this routing. And so these will stay, I do not want them touching the stringer. And probably what I will do is put some kind of cable protection. It shouldn't move because they're all holding fairly snug. And just the tension from this, pushing it that way, just keeps it that nice curve and keeps it from contacting the stringer right there. So, yeah, so I'll show you what I'll do is I'll set the camera up so you can see the shift lever on the transmission, how that's going to work. So I'll shift it one way. You can see how it pushes all the way back there. Then go back to neutral. That. And shift forward. So I don't know if that's forward, reverse. I'll have to sort that out. Neutral again, so I don't know if this is reverse or forward. So PCM 80A transmission, and so I'll have to get that figured out. But anyway, that's how that works. And that connection to the shift lever, it's a little ball joint. I need to order another one because the throttle assembly came with one, but the transmission did not. So that one is actually from my throttle. But so yeah, I'll get one of those, and then you can see just how this cable for the throttle comes up. There's that little blocking member there, and then it just comes up, and that should keep it pretty stable because it's nice and solid connection right there in that bracket, and that's not too far a distance, so I think that'll be good. And then that little ball joint connects there on the end of this cable. So now I need to, of course, encapsulate this, and then that little block there, and then the assembly. You can see those. I need to, of course, encapsulate those, which I will do sometime soon. So yeah, I've got the throttle and shift cable routing all sorted out now. So I am glad about that.